I live in Portland, Oregon, in a small blue Craftsman with white trim and a maple tree in front. I bought that house for $512,000 when Lily was 5 years old. At the time, it felt like a dream, proof that all my late nights and missed holidays at the office had finally led to something solid, something I could call mine. The mortgage was steep, $2,900 a month, but I told myself that stability had a price. The maple tree by the front walk turned gold every October, and the porch creaked when you stepped on the third board. For years, those small details brought me joy. Lately, they felt like reminders that the walls around me didn't hold warmth anymore. The wind rattled the windows like a warning, as if the house itself knew something I refused to say out loud. My days began before dawn. I worked as a quality lead for a logistics company, which meant 12-hour shifts filled with supplier audits, compliance checks, and endless calls with vendors who always seemed to want everything yesterday. On paper, I had control, teams answered to me, reports bore my name, and executives asked for my sign-off. But inside my own house, I felt like a guest, like someone who was tolerated but not cherished. The weight of that contradiction was heavier than any spreadsheet or inspection form. Ethan, my husband, had grown into a shadow version of the man I married. He moved from couch to kitchen to couch with the heaviness of someone who had given up but still wanted everyone to see his struggle. He said his back pain was unbearable, that even sitting upright for more than 10 minutes was too much. When I pressed him about returning to work or even looking for something he could manage from home, he pressed a hand dramatically against his lower back and sighed like a man in an old film. On days when I saw him tagged in photos at cafes with friends, smiling over muffins or showing off a new card trick, I felt something in me split. Pain never stopped him from enjoying a latte, but it always seemed to stop him from holding up his share of our life. And then there was Ruth, his mother. She lived 10 minutes away, which meant she appeared almost daily. She never knocked. She would push open the door and walk in with her sharp eyes scanning everything, as if she had the authority to inspect my living room. She would lift Lily's book off the coffee table with 2 fingers, as though a child's toy were a contaminant. She would point out dust on the blinds or streaks on the windows I had cleaned the night before. A real wife, she often said, keeps the home warm and spotless. A man needs soup, soft light, and comfort. She never mentioned the mortgage I paid, or the bills stacked on my desk, or the way Lily's tuition and after-school program drained my account every month. The groceries alone had climbed to $1,100, and I carried all of it on my shoulders. The numbers on my bank app told me truths Ruth never cared to hear. The winter that broke me was especially cruel. The house never seemed to hold heat, no matter how high I set the thermostat. I bought 2 small space heaters and placed one in the office, one by the couch. I wrapped myself in a wool throw after coming home late, shoulders sore, eyes heavy, fingers still aching from typing. Each night, I would step inside with my laptop bag, ready to cook, clean, and help Lily with homework. And each night, I found Ethan stretched out on the sofa, heating pad against his back, sighing as though his existence was a heroic burden. Ruth sat beside him sometimes, stroking his arm like he was a wounded soldier instead of a grown man who simply refused to take responsibility. At work, my manager Jordan noticed the fatigue I tried so hard to hide. One day, she closed her office door and asked me to sit. "You've been carrying more than your share," she said softly. "I can see it in your eyes." She slid a folder across the desk and told me a new client in London needed someone to lead their expansion. The role came with a base salary of £95,000 and a £2,000 monthly housing stipend. In dollars, it was far more than I earn now. The company would cover relocation, travel allowances, and even Lily's school support. "You're good at hard things," Jordan said. "You should think about it. We'll hold it for you, but not forever." For the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs. A door had cracked open. A chance at a life that didn't revolve around size, complaints, and Ruth's constant critiques. I stared at the offer, imagining red buses, cobblestone streets, a flat with tall windows, and Lily running through a park where no one judged her mother for being tired. That night, I made tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Lily chattered about a science game at school while I stirred the pot. Ethan half-watched a video on his phone, barely looking up. Ruth arrived uninvited and scolded me for using too much butter on the bread. "You'll ruin his health," she said, as if Ethan weren't a grown man choosing to eat seconds. I kept my face blank. It felt like pressing my skin against cold glass. After dinner, I tucked Lily into bed, kissed her forehead, and lingered in the doorway just long enough to feel her steady breathing remind me why I couldn't collapse. Downstairs, the kitchen was silent. I opened my laptop and made 2 lists. The first was filled with numbers: mortgage, car insurance, tuition, utilities, groceries. The second list wasn't numbers. It was what I wanted: freedom, dignity, peace. I folded the papers and tucked them under my notebook. The house felt colder than ever, though the heater hummed. I rubbed my arms, wondering how much longer I could go on like this. At midnight, my phone buzzed with a new voicemail. I almost ignored it. Probably another reminder from work, or one of those automated pharmacy calls I always forgot to return. But something in me pressed play. I didn't know then that those few seconds would unravel everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The voice that came through was Ethan's. His tone wasn't strained or pained. It was smooth, cheerful, and even excited. He wasn't alone. Another woman's voice drifted in, soft and amused, as glasses clinked in the background. My stomach turned cold as I listened. Words about faking pain, about blocking my career, about the house. I froze, the phone hot in my hand. I replayed it once, then again, my mind spinning. The house around me seemed to hum with a sound of betrayal. I set the phone down and stared at the creaking porch boards outside the window. For the first time since I bought that house, it no longer felt like mine. It felt like a trap. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. Everything was about to change. I didn't listen to the voicemail right away. At first, it was just another ping in a sea of constant pings, calendar reminders, work updates, and school alerts. By morning, I had convinced myself it could wait. I made Lily oatmeal with cinnamon and a little honey, the way she liked it, and packed her lunch with carrot sticks, apple slices, and a peanut butter sandwich. She sat on the stool with her backpack already on, humming as if the day ahead held nothing but light. The drive to school was our ritual escape. We sang along to the silly pop songs on the radio, voices tumbling over each other in laughter. When the sun cut through the low clouds, it painted the dashboard gold. At a red light, almost without thinking, I tapped the voicemail. Ethan's voice came first. He didn't sound strained or in pain like he did at home. He sounded vibrant, sharp, alive. "It's perfect, babe," he said. "I'll tell the clinic my pain is worse, that I can't sit for more than 10 minutes. They'll write it up." My grip tightened on the wheel. Then a woman's voice followed, smooth and amused. She said, "If she takes that job, she'll leave you here, and then the house goes on the market. Push the disability claim. Block her promotion. Keep her stuck." There was the faint clink of glasses, like a toast. Ethan laughed, a laugh I hadn't heard in years. "She'll never leave if she thinks I can't cope. We wait, then we split the proceeds." The light turned green, but I couldn't move. The horn blared behind me, and I jolted forward, pulling into the first side street I saw. My hands trembled against the steering wheel as I parked under a bare tree. My chest felt hollow, my throat raw. I played the message again. The same words, the same betrayal. I saved it, then saved it again, terrified the proof might vanish if I didn't press enough buttons. Scrolling up, I noticed a missed call from an unfamiliar number. I dialed back, my pulse hammering. A recorded voice greeted me, calm and professional. "Claire, leave a message." I hung up without speaking, staring at the phone like it had burned me. That day at work, I moved through my tasks like a swimmer under icy water. I checked forms, sent emails, and signed off on supplier audits, but everything felt muffled. My chest hurt. My thoughts circled the same dark drain. At lunch, Jordan asked me to step into a small glass-walled room. "Any decision yet about London?" she asked gently. I swallowed. My voice shook, but I said, "Yes. I want the role." but I'll need 2 weeks to put legal help in place. Jordan studied me for a long moment. Her eyes softened. Take the time you need. The role will be here. It was the first time in months someone had offered me understanding without strings attached. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and searched for attorneys. A colleague once mentioned Michelle Carter, a family lawyer in downtown Portland with a reputation for precision and grit. I called, and to my surprise, she answered herself. Her tone was direct, but steady. Her retainer was $7,500, money I hadn't planned to spend, but money I needed to spend now. I moved the funds from my savings and scheduled an appointment. When I walked into Michelle's office the next afternoon, she met me with a yellow pad in hand and an expression that was neither pity nor judgment. I told her everything, the endless bills, Ruth's constant criticism, Ethan's refusal to contribute, and finally, the voicemail. My words spilled out in a rush, like water breaking through a dam. Michelle listened, pen scratching across the page. When I finished, she set the pen down and said 3 things. First, don't confront him yet. Second, gather every record, bank statements, mortgage payments, receipts. Third, keep your tone calm in every text and email, no matter what. I nodded, though my stomach knotted. Michelle outlined the next steps. We would collect 12 months of payment records. Already, I knew the truth. I had covered 82% of the mortgage and nearly all the utilities. Ethan's contributions were sporadic and small, often late. Michelle said that pattern, combined with the voicemail, could block any claim for spousal support. She would subpoena phone records, request clinic notes, and build a timeline. False disability claims are serious, she reminded me. That evening at home, I acted as though nothing had changed. I cooked spaghetti, helped Lily practice multiplication, and folded laundry. Ruth came by, uninvited as usual, and remarked that the windows looked streaky. Ethan wore his brace and groaned theatrically when he rose from the couch. I smiled thinly, excused myself, and slipped into the laundry room. I turned on the dryer to mask the sound and copied the voicemail to a drive. I photographed bank statements, receipts, and mortgage records. With each click of the camera, a strange steadiness filled me. It was the feeling of steel sliding into place inside my chest. 2 days later, another voicemail arrived. My stomach turned as I pressed play. This time it was Claire again. Her voice was smooth, casual. I booked the weekend. Bring the papers. We'll file after she leaves. Ethan's voice answered. She won't leave. Not with poor me. It's working. They both laughed. I forwarded the file to Michelle. Her reply was a single line. Preserve everything. Do not warn them. The following week, Jordan confirmed the London package in writing. I folded the letter into my bag and took Lily out for hot chocolate. We sat in a corner booth, steam rising from our cups, her small legs swinging. I told her we might spend a year in a city with red buses and big parks. Her eyes widened, sparkling with wonder. Will there be museums with dinosaur bones? She asked. Yes, I said, smiling despite everything. Can I bring my blue blanket? Of course. She leaned into me, warm and trusting. I kissed the top of her head and breathed in the smell of her hair. In that moment I knew, whatever storm was coming, I would face it. I owed her a safe life, not a life spent tiptoeing around sighs and schemes. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet certainty. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't helpless. I had proof, I had a plan, and soon I would have a way out. On a gray Thursday morning, I told Ethan I had accepted the overseas role. I kept my voice light, practiced, almost casual. I explained that the company would pay for a flat in London, that Lily's school there had strong science programs, and that he could visit if he wanted. Ethan pressed a hand to his back, wincing dramatically. I can't handle the stress, he said. The doctor told me I need rest. Then he glanced toward the hallway, as though summoning Ruth without words, as though her presence would lend him the weight he no longer carried himself. The next day, Michelle filed 2 motions on my behalf. The first asked the court to secure the proceeds of the house until a final agreement could be reached. The second requested temporary orders allowing me to travel overseas with Lily for 1 year. Michelle attached 12 months of bank records, mortgage statements, and the saved voicemails that told the story better than I ever could. In her filing, she asked for primary custody, no spousal support based on bad faith, and a parenting plan that allowed for scheduled calls. She presented it all in a clean, steady narrative, one that showed who had carried the weight of our household and who had chosen to scheme. The court set a hearing quickly, as if the evidence itself demanded speed. On the morning of the hearing, I wore a navy blazer and held my breath as I walked into the paneled courtroom. Ethan was already seated with Ruth at his side. His new lawyer, a man with slick hair and a rapid-fire speaking style, leaned toward him and whispered constantly. Ethan clutched a folder to his chest and frowned as though the room itself offended him. Ruth's lips were pressed into a permanent line of disapproval. Michelle sat beside me, her yellow pad open, her posture calm. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My pulse hammered in my throat. The case was called, and Ethan's lawyer launched into a blur of arguments about stress, disability, and a wife abandoning her husband. But when Michelle stood, her voice was slow, deliberate. She laid out facts, payment records showing I had covered 82% of the mortgage and nearly all the utilities, records of Ethan's sporadic contributions, and finally, the recordings. The judge listened, eyes narrowing as Ethan's voice filled the courtroom. He adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Did you fake symptoms?" he asked directly. Ethan shifted in his chair. The judge's gaze didn't waver. "Did you plan to use a claim to block your wife's career?" Silence stretched until Ethan's lawyer requested a recess. When they returned, the sharp tone was gone. Instead, Ethan's lawyer said they were prepared to discuss a settlement. The terms were straightforward. The house would go on the market at $689,000. After subtracting fees and the remaining mortgage, the net was expected to be about $180,000. Based on the payment history, I would receive 70%. Ethan would keep his sedan and his personal items. There would be no spousal support. Child support would follow the state's chart. Modest, predictable, nothing Ethan could twist. We agreed to a parenting plan with video calls and shared holidays that matched the school calendar. When the judge signed the orders, Michelle slid the copy to me and handed me a pen. My hand didn't shake as I wrote my name. The moment the ink dried, I felt a tether snap loose inside me. Spring came, and Lily and I boarded a flight to London. She pressed her face to the window as the plane lifted off, whispering about clouds that looked like castles. The company had already paid the deposit on a small flat near Regent's Park. It was tidy, bright, with white walls and an old fireplace no one used anymore. The monthly rent was fully covered by my housing stipend. We bought small things to make it ours. A used blue bike for £120, a kettle that whistled like a small train, a patchwork quilt for Lily's bed. She started school and made a friend named Isla, a girl who could rattle off dinosaur facts as quickly as Lily. I learned the bus routes and where to find groceries that didn't cost twice what they should. I discovered how the light fell across Regent's Park at 6 in the evening, painting the benches gold. Work was busy, but busy in a way that fed me rather than drained me. I trained a young team, set clear steps, and listened hard. My calendar was heavy, yet my chest felt light. For the first time in years, my work and my life weren't at war with each other. Back in Portland, Ethan's support system unraveled. The clinic reviewed his file and withdrew its note. Claire sent me 3 furious messages demanding explanations I never gave. Ruth left voicemails about family honor and loyalty, but I saved them without reply. Silence was its own kind of strength. The house sold for the list price. After the closing wire hit, my account balance looked like oxygen. I set aside $40,000 for taxes, paid off the last of my credit cards, and moved $70,000 into a fund for Lily's college. The remainder went into a simple savings account. No tricks, no drama. Just peace. One warm Friday evening, after a long week of training sessions and back-to-back calls, Lily and I bought fish and chips wrapped in paper. We sat on a park bench near a street violinist who played with his eyes closed. The notes drifted over us like a soft wind. A man with kind eyes and a quiet smile stood a few feet away, listening intently. When the final note faded, he waited a beat before clapping, as if the silence deserved its own respect. Later, I would learn his name was Daniel. For that night, I only noticed the small detail: a man who gave respect without being asked, who listened before he spoke. It was the kind of quiet strength I hadn't realized I was starving for. That night, when I tucked Lily into bed, she asked if we could stay in London forever. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "We'll see." But deep inside, I knew the answer was already forming. 1 year in London passed faster than I thought it would. What had begun as an escape became a rhythm that finally made sense. Work gave me space to prove myself without resistance, and home gave me quiet. That balance was something I had never known before. Each day, I walked through Regent's Park with Lily on our way to school, her little hand in mine, her voice filling the air with questions about clouds and dinosaurs. She was growing quickly, 2 inches taller that year, and proud of the pancakes she had learned to make every Saturday morning. They were lopsided, sometimes burned, but she grinned every time she placed the plate in front of me, as if she had built a kingdom. I began to notice how small joys replaced old weights. We carried a canvas bag to the market on Sundays and argued about which apples were the best. She always wanted the shiny red ones. I preferred tart green. We laughed at the silliest things and sent photos to my sister in Denver and to Kayla in Boston. I never sent anything to Ruth, though her voicemails still appeared once in a while. I saved them in a folder I didn't open. It was around that time that Daniel entered our orbit in more than passing. He was a project manager from Boston, assigned to London for a 2-year contract. He had a son, Matthew, about the same age as Lily. We first met in Regent's Park when the kids were climbing the same hill, rolling down the grass with wild laughter. Later, we crossed paths again at a coffee shop near the park. After a few polite exchanges, we sat together. He didn't ask heavy questions. He didn't probe. He simply talked about the city, about how strange it felt to be a visitor in a place that slowly became familiar, and about the small things his son did that made him proud. We met again the following week. Then again. He never pushed for more, never asked for explanations about my past, never demanded time I couldn't give. What struck me was the consistency. If he said he would meet me, he showed up. If he was running late, he sent a message. It was nothing grand or dramatic, just gentle things that built a sense of trust. One afternoon, as the children ran in circles around us, Daniel watched them roll down a small hill and said quietly, "Real love isn't a test. It's a place you can set your bag down." I didn't answer, but something softened in me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in the presence of steadiness rather than performance. By autumn, the divorce in Oregon was finalized. Michelle emailed me the decree with a simple note. "You did it." I read the words twice before I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I donated the last of Ethan's books that had arrived in a moving box by mistake. I changed my phone plan, closed an old joint account that held just $19, and bought a blank notebook. On the first page, I wrote to myself, "You are allowed to want a calm life. You are allowed to want joy." Money no longer ruled my sleep. I built a simple plan and stuck to it. Each month, I saved £800 for emergencies and £300 for travel. I let myself buy a green coat that fit well for £110 and didn't feel guilty. Lily started a small jar where she dropped coins when she wanted to help. She loved the ringing sound, like tiny bells, every time a coin hit the glass. With those coins, she said, we would take trips to see castles and lakes. We did just that. On a weekend in the Lake District, we took a cheap train, climbed hills that looked like folded blankets, and stood at the edge of the water. I snapped a photo of Lily with her hair flying in the wind, and it became the picture I looked at whenever work grew too heavy. When the year ended, the company asked if I would stay 2 more years at £105,000 and a higher stipend. I said yes without hesitation. In the same week, Daniel's contract was extended. We didn't rush into anything. We kept our homes separate, our calendars flexible, our expectations light. On Sundays, though, we came together. 4 hands in the kitchen, 2 pans going, children building forts with couch cushions and hanging signs that read "No grown-ups allowed." We ate on the floor sometimes, laughing at the same jokes in silly movies. One evening, Lily asked the question I had been bracing for. "Why did you leave, Dad?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. I put my arm around her and spoke carefully. "Because love that is real should feel safe. It should not demand that you give up your work, or your sleep, or your peace. It should not make you prove yourself every hour." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Safe love is like when you hold my hand on the street." I smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Yes, just like that." She placed her small hand into mine and squeezed, sealing a truth I hoped she would carry into her own life someday. I still thought about the Blue Craftsman house in Portland sometimes. The porch, the creak in the hallway, the maple tree that turned gold every fall. I didn't miss the cold, the hush of tiptoeing around sighs, the weight of disapproval. But I did miss the tree. So, I bought a small potted maple for our London balcony. It swayed in the wind, leaves rustling softly in the mornings when I made coffee. To me, the sound wasn't just leaves moving. It was a promise I had kept, to myself, to Lily, to the life we deserved. I worked hard for this piece. I fought in court with facts, not flames. I walked away from schemes and chose the long, steady path. The old support system fell apart because it was thin, selfish, and mean. The new one grew because I watered it with care. It was simple, but it was enough. When Lily asked me later what I had learned, I told her the truth. Work is good. Love is good. Both are better when they aren't a fight. She smiled, perhaps not fully understanding yet, but holding the wisdom in her small way. Now we go to bed early. We wake up calm. We are not perfect, but we are safe. And that, more than anything, feels like the real victory.